Hey everybody, welcome to the Tournament Center. I'm Zac Hill here with Sam Black, sitting at the top of the standings right now, although unfortunately...
Not as high as I was, but still doing well.
Reasonably good. Now, we obviously don't want to give away all the secrets of the deck that you just drafted.
Right.
But we're going to take a look at Sam's deck from day one. You drafted it. Can you tell us just a little bit about kind of what that deck was?
Well, I first picked Elspeth.
Oh, yeah?
And
is that good?
Yes, that's very good. About as good as it gets. And then just ended up drafting pretty straightforward blue-white heroic, but with a bit of a control bent because I wanted to live to cast Elspeth. Like, I mean, the whole draft, I'm just like, okay, well, how do I, make sure that this is going to be happening?
Cool. So let's actually take a look at some of the cards in Sam's deck. You obviously mentioned Elspeth, Sun's Champion, arguably the best card in the format. I want to be the person arguing for the fact that it's the best card in the format.
Yep.
Also, I see a Celestial Archon, another kind of big rare. How good is that card? I mean, it's kind of expensive. It's vulnerable to enchantment removal. Obviously, though, it's huge.
Yeah, it's great. Those things don't matter.
Sure.
That card's awesome. That was my first pick in pack 3.
Oh, yeah?
In the last round, I got to use those two together in a somewhat unusual way.
How's that?
I got to bestow the Celestial Archon onto my opponent's Prophet of Krufix, and then use the -3 ability on Elspeth to kill the Prophet, and then put the Archon into play on my side.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah.
Well, way to see that play. Now, obviously, Sam had good opens in pack 1 and pack 3. It's not just about opening rares, though.
No, certainly not.
Take the rest of the deck. This is kind of a little bit of a blue-white heroic deck. You've got some early drops with heroic. We see favored Hoplite there, Winged Steed Rider, Battle-Wise Hoplite, kind of the theme card, and then Setessan Battle Priest, who's a card people aren't generally that excited to play.
Yeah.
How would you kind of rank each of these cards, and when did you take them?
Well,
in the draft?
those 3 are all awesome, and the Battle Priest is kind of mediocre. Oddly, all of those heroes, I think, came to me surprisingly late.
Oh, yeah?
The Winged Steed Rider was actually 8th pick in pack 3, the last one I could possibly see in the draft.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see it.
Would you say that card's like the best white common in the set?
By a lot. There's no.
Okay.
I don't know what other white common you could argue for. Yeah, so that was quite a gift. So I don't remember exactly where the Hoplites were. They weren't especially early. Both of them were like, oh, great. And then the Battle Priest, in general, I like that card more than other people do. I think that the main reason that you're playing just random idiots in your blue-white deck is to bestow things onto them.
Sure.
Because you end up with a lot of bestow stuff, and you don't always get enough heroes to bestow stuff onto all of them, and so you have to just play some cheap bodies. And the ones that cost 2, you're either looking to bestow something on later, or you're looking to put an ordeal on them. And as long as I'm planning to target it, getting the 2 life is nice, but also I like the 1/3 body more than a 2/2 body for pumping, because it's more likely to live and use those enhancements to become just a more relevant body. Also, I feel like just in terms of the other creatures in the format, there are a reasonable number of 2/1s, such that I feel like a 1/3 before you get to the point where you're bestowing it actually matches up better against the other early creatures than a 2/2, especially given that you don't want to be trading early because you want the guy there to bestow on.
That makes total sense. And then by the time you've bestowed a bunch of things on it, you don't care.
Yeah,
about
you don't care what its original numbers were. And also, there are a lot. I mean, the games in this format often are really racy.
Yeah.
And getting the 2 life whenever you targeted it that actually adds up.
Cool. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the bestow creatures that you were talking about. There's obviously a lot of ways to trigger heroic in this deck. We see 3 bestow cards here, and then Dauntless Onslaught is one of my favorite cards in the entire format in terms of enabling heroic cards. When did you get some of these guys, and how high do you pick them in general?
The Onslaught was my 2nd pick after Elspeth.
Oh, okay.
It was, it's better than all the white commons except Winged Steed Rider.
Okay.
And it was the only good white card in the pack, and just you stick with the plan. Don't want to put someone else in white behind, don't want to end up in a situation where I have to not play my Elspeth. That's worst case scenario.
Terrible.
So pretty easy pick there, especially since white really wants to have heroes anyway, so might as well have a great heroic enabler. And then the 2 observant Elspeth,
The observant
whatever that guy is.
nymph thing.
Yeah. I think one of those was like around 3rd or 4th in pack 1, and then the other one I think was like late in pack 2. The Hopeful Eidolon, that one actually tabled.
Really?
Which that was happening a lot very early in the drafts that I was doing, but more recently I think a lot of people have learned that that guy is great and you should like take it pretty early. So I definitely wasn't expecting it to table, and that was just another good sign that white was pretty open at my table. Yeah, that was good. And then the Heliod's Emissary, I believe, was my open in pack 2.
Nice. And do you normally find yourself bestowing that, or do you hard cast that guy? Or does it just depend?
Done a little of each.
Sure.
It's certainly one of the bestow guys that you're most likely to hard cast, just because the body up front is so good and 7's a lot of mana. But it's also, I mean, it's worth waiting for if you are in a spot where you can do that.
Cool. Okay, so let's look at some of the other ways that Sam's able to turn on his heroic cards. You've got 2 copies of Chosen by Heliod and 1 copy of Ordeal of Heliod. Are these kind of filler, or are these really important?
No, I see those. I like those cards a lot.
Oh, yeah?
I think all the Ordeals are pretty good. That's another one that I think that tabled fairly late that I didn't think would. But like, it's just so good if you put an Ordeal on like any 1 or 2 drop, and then if you are looking to trigger it, being able to put it on a guy with heroic that gets a counter, so you're triggering it either immediately or 1 turn later, certainly very powerful. There was at least 1 game where the 10 life I gained was absolutely huge. And then Chosen by Heliod is just such a giant free roll. Like the fact that you like trigger heroic and make your guy bigger and draw a card is just like, I just want a lot of that stuff in my deck. Like it's just like, I just feel like every extra copy you have just makes your deck almost strictly better.
Awesome. Okay, so you're not actually just playing a white deck. We saw 1 blue card so far, but there's actually a lot more than that. There's a Trident Fortune Hunter that kind of continues the theme of guys that you want to target that are awesome that you play early. We see yet another one of the nymphs, an Endeo creature, and Fate Foretold, which is sort of like Chosen by Heliod.
Yeah, the blue Chosen by Heliod. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Definitely the Triton Fortune Hunter. Anytime I target that guy with a like Fate Foretold or a Chosen by Heliod, I believe at some point during the tournament I was like, Triton Fortune Hunter, untap, all right, go off. Like, it's like draw 2, like, it's so good. Yeah.
It's like playing Turboland.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, just amazing to bestow anything onto. Cool. Like in general, like a card is better than like a sorcery speed battle growth. Right. So like, and like making a guy even bigger when you're already bestowing more numbers onto it is just like, okay.
Makes total sense. You'd rather just have more cards to make sure if your guy dies.
Yeah, especially when you're in a situation where the more cards are likely to target it again and keep chaining.
Sure. Okay, so Sam's still got some more cards in his deck. He's got, you know, obviously a few more creatures. These cards are just, I call them the supporting cast. Yes. You kind of have to play 23 cards. And then there's a few more effects that are just kind of good in the deck. If we can take a look at those. Beyond these creatures, we see Array of Dissolution, 2 copies of Griptide. Griptide's a card that a lot of people are talking about in this format. Can you tell us why that card is so good when we've seen it before?
Well, we have seen it before, but it's been good before.
Sure.
But also, there's just like not a lot of removal that gets any creature at instant speed in this format. Right. And by not a lot, I mean basically none. And like, Voyage's End is similar and very good, but like not spending a card to do it because your opponent's down a card because you put it on top of their deck instead of in their hand. It's great, and it's just a huge tempo play in a format that's really about racing. And the fact that you can do it like at instant speed when they bestow something and not get hit by the bestow guy, and then their bestow guy is like on the table by itself, is just a really like the fact that they spent that extra, like, yes, you didn't like counter their enchant creature the way that you would if it wasn't like a bestow guy, but the fact that they spent so much mana on it, it's a really big tempo swing in a format that's really tempo based. Cool.
So the final thing I want to talk about, Sam, is just the cards that you didn't play but that were in your pool. A lot of these cards are cards that people kind of get excited to play every once in a while. There's Last Breath, which is a removal spell, good against the fast decks. Traveling Philosopher, it's vanilla 2/2, but a lot of white decks want vanilla 2/2s. Dissolve, which is a rock-solid counterspell, and Prescient Chimera, that's a 3/4 flyer with an ability.
Yeah.
Why weren't these cards good enough to make it?
So the blue cards, a lot of the reason that they didn't make it was that I wanted, like I had a lot more white than blue in my deck, as we saw. It took a while to get to the blue cards in the slides. I wanted my mana to be 10/7, so I didn't want a 3-mana double blue spell. It was like the Dissolve was actually the last card that I cut after I started looking at my lands and saw oh, this is pulling me to a mana base that I don't want, or not fitting well with the mana base that I do want, let's just not bother.
Awesome.
And then the Chimera, like, I didn't have a ton of things that actually cost 5, but I had a lot of guys that I wanted to be bestowing on turn 5. And I just wanted to have, like, my plan to be to play early stuff and then bestow on that turn. And he just didn't fit into, like, my game plan in the way that I was envisioning my games playing out. And again, double blue is kind of a disincentive to be playing him.
And is Last Breath just not very good?
So Last Breath is very good in the right matchups, very bad in the wrong matchups. And I actually had 2 Last Breaths, and I just felt like when I'm playing a matchup where it's good, I'll be able to side them both in. That matchup will end up being pretty good for me anyway. And since I'm playing kind of like a combo deck where I'm trying to get things that work together and build synergies and stuff, you don't want just like a card that's doing its own thing in there if it's not super powerful. And then the Traveling Philosopher, I kind of already talked about, the like that guy versus the Battle Priest with like why I'd prefer 1/3 to 2/2 and stuff. And my deck was very good. Like, that's a card I want to be playing, but there just wasn't anything that I just couldn't make room. The other cards were better.
Really rough problem to have. Deck's too good. Well, cool. Sam, thank you so much. I'm Zac Hill. This is a Tournament Center. That's Sam 1's Day 1 draft deck. Sam, best of luck today.
Thank you.